of one of these abusive government takings. And so I'm just going to tell you one story about one family. On the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the Mountain Valley Pipeline alone, there are more than 2,000 families who have stories equally important who you won't hear. And interestingly, FERC has approved 53 LNG pipelines in the last 2 years alone. Approximately 10,000 families, more than 2,700 miles of these pipelines. And to ground this and what it means for eminent domain, on the ACP, 95.5% of that 600-mile pipeline is on previously undisturbed private land. This is eminent domain abuse at a completely unprecedented scale. So this is my family. This is my wife, Jill. She is a painter and a potter. My son, Quinn, he's 18. He goes to Penn State studying biotechnology. It's my daughter, Savannah. She's just about to turn 16, and she goes to Nelson County Public High School. In February, she's going to go to Argentina as an exchange student. This is where we live. This is the Rockfish Valley. If you've never been down to this part of Nelson County or Virginia, you've got to go. It's stunning. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. I took that picture when I went on a run from my house in July. This is my house. My wife and I come from a fine arts background, and we spent a number of years designing our dream home. And in 2005, we began building this place with a lot of attention to detail because we expected to live out the rest of our lives here. This is my sister. She's why we're here. In 1988, my sister was infected with AIDS when she was date raped by a male model. And in 2001, when the drugs were good enough that she could really contemplate having her own children that would be HIV negative, she and I began talking about the fact that we just didn't know how long we had together. We didn't know how long her health would hold up. And so we made the decision to buy land and move next to each other for two really important reasons. The first one, so that we would have as much time together as possible, right? No regrets. The second one, so that our families would be so inextricably entwined that no matter what happened, we'd be ready for it, right? We wouldn't be moving together because she got sick. We'd already be there. 15 years later, this is what we got to show for it. Because not only did my sister move there, but my sister-in-law, my wife's sister, and her husband moved there as well. And we bought a piece of land and we built 3 homes near each other and we raised these kids. And what you don't see in this picture, coming down the center of this ridge right here, is a 125-foot wide swath, clear cut, racing towards our family homestead. That would be the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Let me introduce you to this guy. This is my dad. He's a retired colonel in the United States Marine Corps Reserves. In Vietnam, he flew rescue helicopters. He would go into the front lines every day, pick up wounded soldiers, and fly them back to medic tents over and over again. And you know, we're just a couple days past Veterans Day, and it always strikes me that how lucky we are that he made it through physically and mentally intact. He lost his 3 best friends in his first tour. And I point him and my mom out because in 2012, when they decided to retire, they took the old home that was on the property and they renovated it to this beautiful mountain place that they could be in for their retirement, so that they could live next to all those grandkids, right? And now, in the waning years of his life, the government that he fought so hard to serve and protect wants to reward him by taking his land and giving it to a private corporation for their shareholder gain. This is not what eminent domain was built for. This is not the country he raised me in and that he fought so hard to protect. All right, I'm going to switch for a minute and talk a little bit about jobs, which may seem weird, but our family also has an investment engagement that this pipeline impacts. And I want to just, I can't not address this issue. Every time we talk about economic benefit, and our governors and our senators talk about how these pipeline creates jobs, it is a completely false narrative. Look at the license plates on this one picture. These are the guys who came to cut the trees in Virginia at Wintergreen last year. There's not a single Virginia license plate there. Hell, there's license plates from Oregon, where Bill's from. And why is that? It's because the 17,000 jobs they tell you they're going to create, they're crap. It is the same group of people moving around the country like a carnival. They roll in, they set up a man camp, they cut trees, they move on to the next project. They roll in, they dig trenches and lay pipe, they move on to the next project. They're just moving around the country. In fact, the environmental impact statement for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline shows you that there are a total of 82 permanent jobs created. 600 miles of disturbance, $7 billion that the ratepayers have to pay, 82 jobs. This is the Kite Festival that happens behind Bold Rock Cidery, just in front of my house and between this and our investment property. You want to talk about an economic impact project, Bold Rock Cidery, hundreds of jobs, second best-selling cider in America. That's what rural economies should be doing, right? In any regards, John Washburn, who started Bull Rock, called me in 2013 and told me that there was a piece of land coming up for sale across the street from him. And he knew that for a long time I'd been talking about this idea of building a resort project in our community that would make a place for people to come and stay overnight and fall in love with Rockfish Valley and Nelson County in the same way we had. And so I went and looked at that property together with my dad. It's this 100-acre parcel, and we bought it. We fell in love with it primarily because of this stream. This is the Spruce Creek stream. It is a truly spring-fed, natural stream, still harbors native brook trout. And this stream is contiguous to the whole 100 acres of the property. That right there is the future center line of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, were it to be built. But before we knew about that, we spent about 2 years, 2014 into 2015, designing this project, the Spruce Creek Resort and Market. It fully built out, it could be as much as a $35 million project. 2 restaurants, a wedding venue, a market, a bunch of boutique cabins, all specifically built to celebrate the natural sort of wonder of the area. Oh, and by the way, that project, 100-acre parcel, less than 1 mile of the 600-mile Atlantic Coast Pipeline, 125 permanent jobs minimum. 1.5 times that of the pipeline. But then we got this in 2015, a letter of pre-condemnation survey, both on our investment property and on our homestead property, about 1.5 miles apart. And we said, what the hell is that? And so I'll tell you what it is. After 4 years of going through this, a pre-condemnation survey is when a company says they want to come to your land and they want you to give them the right to trespass, so that they can evaluate whether or not your parcel is appropriate for a project they want to build. And if you tell them no, they can't come on your land, they'll sue you and take you to court, as they did us, to get the right to trespass. And then they'll come, when they go on your land and they survey it, if they decide they want to build a project on your land, they'll decide how much they're going to pay you for that too. And if you say, no, I'm not interested, they'll sue you again, as they've done us, and take you to court for eminent domain. And so when the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission says that eminent domain should only be used as a last resort, this is absolute garbage. Eminent domain is used in every single landowner case from the very outset. Because when you get that letter, what happens to people, right? Most of the people don't have the resources my family has, or the education, or the opportunity, or just the energy to fight like this, right? And so they take whatever deal they can get, they negotiate to move it a little further away, get a little more money, because they don't believe they have any choice. And historically, they're right. This is not what eminent domain was created for. You've listened to the policy folks describe. Eminent domain is supposed to be for things that are transferred into the public trust. It is an extreme power of the government, right? It should never be used to take an asset from an individual and give it to another individual, from a company like ours and give it to a company like Dominion's. So what's going to happen? This is the proposed pipeline path, the clear cut through our resort project, which they say is wholly compatible with our project, by the way. Never mind, it would cut down all the trees in the area where the tree houses would be and the spa. This, $13,180, is what they claim is fair and just compensation. So this is our home. This is my sister's house and this is my house. This yellow path you see here, that's the permanent right-of-way of the pipeline, more or less. This red line is our property lines. And these were kind of arbitrary, right? We bought land together, we're family, we split it up. We didn't think much about that. But that is the total clear cut for the pipeline. Comes within a few feet of her driveway, within a couple hundred feet of my front door. But just by virtue of the fact that it doesn't touch my property line, I'm deemed to have no negative economic value. I have no recourse. I have nothing to say. I don't even have standing in that case. This is what's called the incineration zone. Every single thing within that big red square would simply cease to exist if this pipeline blew up. And by the way, the only other 42-inch natural gas pipeline built recently was in service 7 days earlier this year and blew up. And it blew a 10-acre crater. Think about that. So where are we now? I just met with Senator Kane 2 weeks ago at Bull Rock, who's still on the campaign trail. And he's been pretty clear on this. The FERC process is broken. It doesn't determine whether a pipeline is needed. We just recently had Ken Cuccinelli, right, a pretty strong energy hawk, a Republican conservative, our former Attorney General, say, the process that allows Dominion to do business this way is broken. Consumers will be left holding the bag. We have 4 FERC commissioners right now. 2 of them have said the project as proposed is not in the public interest. And yet, because of the things we talked about, they still have the power of eminent domain. So we were served condemnation papers in October on both our homestead and our investment property. We filed responses to both of those now saying, no, we dispute all of this. They will set a court date sometime in 2020. And the pipeline, probably between now and Christmas, will turn around and say to the court, we can't wait till 2020, we want quick take. And you've already heard what the right to quick take is, right? Basically they say, hey look, give us the right to come cut the trees, dig the trench, put in the pipe. And when we get to court later, the landowner can argue about it. But really all you have left to argue is over price. And I don't want to argue price. There isn't any price. It isn't for sale, period. It's wrong, right? And so what does this mean for, and by the way, as we've also heard, this completely takes away our constitutional right to due process. We have nowhere to make an argument that this is an unnecessary taking, even when all the experts are saying so. And so what does it mean for the four of us? It means between now and Christmas, we will likely stand arm in arm in front of the bulldozers and the guys with chainsaws and require them to arrest us before they cut the first damn tree on our property. Because even though it may be legal, it isn't right. And we have to stand up for our constitutional rights. Our family's blessed, right? We've got resources. No matter what happens in this, we'll make it through. But what about our neighbors in Union Hill? I don't know if you've heard about this. This is a whole community of freed slaves who've owned their property for over 100 years. Generally, it's the only thing most of them have. And the pipeline goes through their community. What about the Lumbee tribe in North Carolina, right? We take the land away from the Native Americans, we give them another place to live in North Carolina, and now we run a pipeline through the center of it. What about the 7-year-old woman in Lovingston, whose husband died in the last 2 years, she says, over stress from this, but who is living within 50 feet of the center line of the pipeline? The defense of private property is the standard by which every provision of law, past and present, shall be judged, right? So I'm so grateful to each of you being here to represent us from our elected officials is because I've got an idea of something you could do. There are 53 of these pipelines approved since 2017. Under a process everyone is acknowledging is broken, right? So saying that we're going to fix the process in the future, that just isn't good enough. That's sacrificing 10,000 families. We need to put a moratorium on this. We need to stop all the pipelines that are in application and all the pipelines that are under construction approved under this broken process. We need to fix the process and then reevaluate which, if any of them, should be built. Right? That's what we want. And what I would say, please tell you, go back to your legislators, is do it for these guys, right? And for all those kids. These are all the kids that live in the neighborhood in front of us, in the blast zone. Right? Look, we did everything we were supposed to do as citizens to support, protect the country, to play by the laws, to play by the rules. We need each of you who work with our elected officials to go back and tell them it's time to stand up and represent the public in this case. We need you. Thank you.